Hi, I'm Luke Byers, the Agriculture and Natural Resources Extension Agent for the River Valley District, and we are here at the North Central Kansas Experiment Fields, where we will be touring through some of the varieties of wheat that our agronomists here have been put in the field. And we have our specialist today, Romulo Lollato, who is our K-State Research and Extension Wheat Production Specialist, as well as Kelsey Andersen Onofre, who is our K-State Research and Extension Wheat Pathologist Specialist. We also have with us Bryson Haverkamp, who is a representative with the Kansas Wheat Alliance, detailing some of the varieties that have been put out by the Kansas State University Wheat Breeding Program. We hope that you enjoy viewing over 30 wheat varieties and hope that it helps you in making your wheat production decisions this coming crop year.
Mosaic. It should have some tolerance. It's not perfect, but if it's in one of those high stress scenarios, it should do okay.
Up next here we have a SY Wolverine. So I guess we talked quite a bit about SY Wolverine here this morning already. Medium early maturing variety, medium in terms of height there. It's a variety that has done well around the state for a few years now. I think it was released back in 2019. Decent standability. I have heard growers report that in very high yielding conditions they saw Wolverine had more lodging that they liked it. I haven't necessarily seen that, but we had some reports from growers on that. It has SY Wolf, Platt, and Everest in the background. We tend to think of Wolverine as a decent drought tolerant variety, but I guess we're seeing this year that perhaps if we have extreme drought conditions as we're having this year, it hasn't necessarily been holding up as well there. So again, we're kind of always learning on the go about these varieties. Another variety that we would have a concern with acid soils here, and as we discussed a little bit before, acid soils will make things worse in a drier year just from lack of that rooting system. And so maybe what we're seeing some with Wolverine this year could be that combination of somewhat acidic soils making the drought even worse there. We have also heard concerns on thrashability of this variety. Have you had any concerns with thrashing it?
Didn't really notice last year. I know one thing where we planted at, we did have a little better beans there, and towards the winter, I mean it comes through in flying colors, and being a little bit heavy residue. I mean it's a lot of them fantastic. And like I said, maybe it's probably different, the week more colors, and maybe that too.
Yeah, it could be. If it is a higher, in dry years we need to manage our biomass, right? And if we have too much biomass early on, it's going to use more water, it can hurt a little bit more on the back end.
But it really, at this point, it doesn't look good for that potential what it did have.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough year to make decisions on it. I don't know if that I would just make too many decisions based on this year alone, because hopefully it doesn't repeat too often there. Kelsey, a few concerns on the Wolverine in terms of disease?
Yeah, so stripe rust would be a watch out. I actually planted Wolverine in my inoculated stripe rust fungicide trials, and it does pretty well there in terms of having a lot of disease, right? So just something to watch. You can apply a fungicide and that can do pretty well. But actually the first report of stripe rust that we had in Kansas this year was on irrigated Wolverine in Edwards County. So, it really is something to watch with this variety. It does have wolf in the background, and wolf was really good for those leaf spotting diseases, tan spot, septoria. Wolverine also has that. We've seen it hold up really well in those wheat after wheat environments. It has Everest in the background, and it doesn't bring the scab tolerance from Everest. So that's something to watch when it's corn, wheat after corn.
Zenda, Bryson, you want to cover the KWA ones?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I'm Bryson Haverkamp with the Kansas Wheat Alliance. We market and promote the K-State developed wheat varieties. So a lot of them we've moved to the KS in front of them. Zenda's a little bit older variety. It was released in 2016, so it was before we started doing that. I'd assume most of you are familiar with Zenda. It's been around for a while. It was put out as an Everest replacement. It actually has Everest in the background of it. Doesn't have quite the scab tolerance as Everest, but when it was released, it was probably the second best option out there as far as scab tolerance goes. It does have good leaf rust, intermediate on stripe rust. And so really, where this would be a good fit is still those corn or after corn acres with that level of scab tolerance. it's kind of fell off these last couple years with this extreme drought we've been facing. It doesn't have the best drought tolerance. If we'd get back into a more normal year, I definitely think it'd still be a good option if you're planting a lot of wheat after corn. So,
AG Radical. Have any of you guys have experience with Radical around here? It is a variety that's being geared more towards like I-35 and east, and so probably is a little bit too far west for the variety out here. Don't think that we need to spend a whole lot of time on it, but variety that is a kind of like medium to medium late maturity, similar to what we have in Monument, medium height, decent standability there, quality, so protein tends to be on the high side as well. Couple of watch outs there, stem rust and stripe rust. So just a couple watch outs.
Romulo, when you say east I-35, do you mean 135 or 35?
35, I-35.
Okay, so way eastern Kansas.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep, good comment there. AM Cartwright. So this variety here, it was actually a K-State line. It was in the K-State breeding program, and then we released it out to AgriMax. It's a variety that has been doing quite well in central Kansas. It shares a parent with Bob Dole, so with that it also brings a pretty good quality to the table here. Good straw strength, does well on acid soils as well, and it has again showed up in terms of yield trials fairly consistently there in the central part of the state. One to keep an eye on. Now, drought was a concern. One of the reasons we decided to release this variety or license it out was that in that 2018 drought that we have, it was actually losing some more tealers than what we were kind of comfortable with. And that's about a similar response that Bob Dole has to drought as well. And so probably the parent that it's sharing is bringing that characteristic. As dry as we've been this year, I have the feeling that it's not going to show up towards the top too much. But again, drought being a concern. What about disease package, Kelsey and Cartwright?
Yes, we've seen this hold up pretty well to leaf and stripe rust, so it's one you could probably get away without a fungicide there in those heavy leaf and stripe rust years.
up next we have KS Ahern. KS Ahern is a medium late maturity variety. It's half Gallagher in the background of it, and so I feel like we're probably honestly a little too far north for where KS Ahern is going to be best fitted for. It's more a south central adapted, and it's done really well down. Had a good yield performance down there. I will say where Ahern may be a fit up here is it does have good forage potential. In Romulo's forage studies, it's been towards the top of the last few years in that trial, and so you know, if you're one who's looking for a wheat to graze, it may be a good option there. It's that medium late, so it does give you a little bit longer of a window to graze it as well. Disease package wise, it's got good leaf rust. It's a little bit more susceptible to stripe rust. It is going to be fairly susceptible to scab and wheat streak mosaic virus. So if either one of those are a concern, it'd definitely be a watch out. So probably a little too far north, but like I said, would be a good forage option if you're looking for that.
Up next here we have Showdown. It's an Oklahoma State variety, so again we're probably a little bit too far north for Showdown as well. With that said, it has performed quite well up to until that Salina area, and I think that's part of the reason why the breeder is kind of calling it Showdown. It's kind of like a standoff between the breeders for that area in central Kansas, right? And so variety that is going to be a medium to medium late variety, medium tall as well. Standability can be a concern here and there, and it's just going to be average on acid soils. But yield performance has been good in south central Kansas and all the way into the central part of the state. I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with Showdown as far north as we are up here.
Yeah, this is one that's been good on stripe rust, although the watch-out is leaf rust. So you can have years where it's warm and wet at the end of the season and you can get leaf rust. This probably isn't the best scab option, and again, probably not so great this far north.
Can you tell us what some of the damage is on right there near the front?
Like that white head.
You're talking about the white head here? Mm-hmm. So we have a couple of things going on, right? So these here would be freeze damage, right? We see that it's just the very top of the head that got damaged. Maybe we lost like one spike like here, and we can see that the anthers are all twisted up, and sorry, the beards here, the awns, they're all twisted up, right? So freeze damage, very typical symptoms. This one, we see that the head is white and the last internode is white, but the flag leaf is green and everything else is green. So this look like wheat stem maggot, yep, and we pull it and it comes very easy. And we can see that it was kind of chewed here in the bottom. So this will be wheat stem maggot. Again, when the head is white like that and it pulls off very easily, that will be wheat stem maggot. Nothing that will be of economic importance there. We see wheat stem maggot kind of every year, just randomly across fields in Kansas. So.
Up next we have KS Providence. This is the latest release out of the Manhattan breeding program, and it's one we're really excited about. And the reason why is it brings a really high yield level, and it's also pretty stable on the more stress locations as well. So yeah, we think back the last 5 years of the breeding program that it's been tested in, we had a lot of extremes, really wet 2019 to, really dry last couple years on it. And Providence has been consistently towards the top in Allen's breeding program. I know he uses 4699 as one of his better competitive checks out there. He thinks it's a really good centrally adapted variety, and Providence has been consistently beating that. A lot of that comes back to its disease package, has a really strong disease package. It's going to have a really good durable leaf rust resistance. It's more intermediate to maybe moderately susceptible on stripe rust, but it seems to get going just a touch slower in it. And so you pair it, it has a little bit of scab tolerance. It's not going to be quite as good as Zinda, maybe a step behind Zinda. But with that slower stripe rust, it may allow you to wait and hold off that fungicide application and pair that, right at the flowering stage to try to get some good scab control there as well. It doesn't have a wheat streak mosaic gene, but it does have some tolerance to wheat streak mosaic. It's not going to be the strongest variety out there, but it'll definitely still perform to an extent in some wheat streak mosaic pressure. Couple watch outs on it is going to be acid soil tolerance. So if you're getting 5.5 or below, it's probably not a variety you'd want to be picking there. If you're one that's going after premium markets, it's going to be acceptable quality. It's not going to be anything special on that. And then also Hessian fly, it's pretty susceptible to Hessian fly, so not one I'd probably be going out super early with on a variety. So weed on weed, it does have some level of tan spot and septoria resistance, so it might be a good option too, on a weed on weed acre as well. But overall, we're pretty excited. Like I said, high yielding with pretty stable performance across a wide geography and region. Decent drought tolerance, so it's going to be able to move west as well a little bit. So
yeah, definitely one to keep an eye. I think that it's probably going to be a good fit for this region here. And as Bryson was mentioning, the drought tolerance that it has kind of comes from a rye translocation that brings a little bit larger root mass to that variety, root volume. And essentially, if that variety has a larger root volume, essentially has a bigger bucket to explore, right? It can have more water, more nutrients. And so keep an eye on. It has been doing really well. I think it's going to be a good option for this region. Rockstar, another variety from the Polansky that is licensed through Polansky, variety that has had a good yield record in central Kansas here. Originally, it was released as I-35 and East, but it has performed better and better towards the central part of the state too. So I don't expect it that we'll move too far west from here, but out here, I think it's still a good variety to have in the short list there. Decent standability here on Rockstar is going to be a medium height variety, medium to medium late in terms of maturity, similar to SY Monument, maybe a day or so earlier than Monument there. Good on acid soils as well, perhaps just average on that test weight. One thing that we usually notice in Rockstar, maybe you're not seeing here as much, but compared to other varieties, I think we're also in good shape here. But it tends to keep the stem green all the way to the bottom there fairly long in the season, so it's got a good stay green potential there, and I think Kelsey may have to do some of the disease package on it.
Yes, this is another one we've seen do well against those leaf spotting diseases, so it does well wheat after wheat, where we have tan spot, septoria, saganospora. We see it stay pretty clean there. Also good on leaf and stripe rust, so just generally a good disease package. And this is one we've seen perform pretty well. I'd say similar to Zenda when it comes to scab. So, you know, that's something that could go well after the corn.
I know they said it's winter kill awful bad this year.
Oh, bad winter kill.
Oh, did it have? Yep.
Clancy said, guys telling me they wanted to get so many activities, talking about destroying and go up and a couple dollars a bushel more for it because they lost 50,000 bushels of seed.
Okay. Yeah. Again, we don't get winter kill every year, so that did worse. And I appreciate you sharing that because again, because we don't get winter kill every year, the more information we can get from what you're seeing, the better for us.
Next one is experimental that's on track to be released this fall to seed producers. You know, we call it 1017. Tentative name on it is going to be KS Mako if it does get released this summer. Kind of the calling card of KS Mako is going to be its quality. And so it carries a really high quality, going to be similar, if not maybe a little bit better than SY Monument. And so it's one like Graincraft and some of these other mills are already interested in from a quality standpoint. Yield performance wise, it's going to be maybe just a touch behind Providence, but it's still going to be fairly competitive out in the market against a lot of these other varieties. And so, you know, you're going to find high yield performance with a decent quality, and so can go after those premium markets. Disease package wise, it's going to be more susceptible to leaf and stripe rust, and so if you get a heavy year of either one of those, you're going to have to plan on a fungicide application on Mako. It does, we're still confirming it, but we're pretty sure it carries the WSM2 gene, and so it's going to give it pretty high level of resistance to wheat streak mosaic virus, to that 18 or 65 degree Fahrenheit threshold level on that. Scab tolerance, it's going to be pretty susceptible to scab, and so definitely not one you'd want to be going after corn. But like I said, it would be a good one if you're going after those premium markets. Would be a really good variety there. Not going to be giving up so much yield to produce a high premium, high quality wheat. Would be a really good complement, I think, to KS Providence when it gets out. Probably a little bit better drought tolerance in it too, and so that may be something too to look at.
WB 4523, this one is a new West bred variety as of last year. Again, released in 2022 there. Medium maturing variety. The plant type of this variety here, it's very similar to what we had in the WB Cedar in the past. So if you guys remember, that WB Cedar was a short variety, really good standability, with excellent yield potential there. So I think that it should be competing with that 4699 in terms of the acres where it's going to get planted at, in terms of higher yielding bottom ground where we can really express that yield potential. Susceptible to acid soils as well, so acid soils will be a concern. Fairly large seed with lower tillering potential, so we need to really ramp up the population on this one here. But again, I think it's one that's going to have a niche market for those higher yielding grounds where you really want to push for yield potential there. Kelsey, any comments on the disease on this one?
Yeah, we've just gotten a couple looks at it now, so it seems like it's intermediate for stripe rust. We'll keep looking at that, but from just the first notes that we've had, we don't have any notes on leaf rust here. It should be a good option for scab, so we'll hopefully confirm that soon. Weaknesses would be Hessian fly. It doesn't have Hessian fly resistance, and also it should be on the weaker side for wheat streak mosaic.
Up next is KS Hatchet. KS Hatchet has Duster in the background of it, which is another Oklahoma State variety. Duster was well known for its high tillering capacity, and KS Hatchet carries that as well. So it's a high tillering variety, and it's on that medium early to early maturity. And so where we've seen KS Hatchet really perform well is later planted, you know, after soybeans or any other later planted situation. Disease package wise, it's going to have moderate resistance to leaf rust, It's going to be moderately susceptible to stripe rust, so on a heavy stripe rust year, you're going to have spray a fungicide on it. It's also pretty susceptible to scab and wheat streak mosaic virus. If you do have low acid soil tolerance, or low acid soils, this is going to have some of the best acid soil tolerance out of a K-State variety in our lineup. So performance-wise, it's probably, once again, with that Oklahoma State background, has been performing a little bit better south of here. I still think it'd be a good fit, though, if you're planting a lot of wheat acres late, looking for a little bit of maturity difference there, with this one being a little bit earlier.
LCS Atomic AX, so another coaxium variety. This one was a 2019 release. Out of the coaxium varieties, it's probably the earliest one in terms of maturity. It's a medium short variety, early maturing, decent standability there. Probably if we get in very high yielding conditions, we can have some issues with standability, but handles acid soils fairly well. It also has a Colorado State line on the background that brings a pretty good drought tolerance to the table. When Atomic was released, it was released more as a south central, southwest Kansas and into Oklahoma variety, but it has performed quite well kind of throughout this central region here, so it has moved up north more than what we originally thought. So again, within the coaxium lineup, maybe one to take a look at in terms of yield, it has been performing quite well. Kind of a little bit lower on the tillering side, so not much in terms of tillering ability there. Might want to bump up the population a little bit. It's going to be below average in terms of milling and baking as well.
Now this is one that has been very good for stripe grass. We've seen that hold on well. A little weaker on leaf rust. That would be something to watch. Another one, similar to what we talked about with steel, that's actually stem rust susceptible. Again, just something to keep in mind. Atomic's one that we've seen hang on pretty well for wheat streak mosaic. It does yield even when there is high wheat streak pressure. It's not perfect. We think it might have the weak gene, although we haven't been able to confirm that.
LCS Julep, looking pretty rough here. Julep, it's a release out of Lima Grain. It's been around for perhaps a couple of years now. It was put out as an LCS mint type of replacement, perhaps with a little bit better standability and maybe a day or two earlier in maturity than what we used to have in LCS mint. Good drought tolerance in Julep. Actually, we're seeing that it's hanging in fairly well this year compared to other varieties when the issue was only drought. It's been looking fairly decent. But the yield history on it hasn't necessarily been too impressive. And if you look at the SRPN trials that they are tested before they are released, it was below average there. In our K-State trial so far, it has kind of been below average too. Seeing it this year, I have the feeling it may come up a little bit more there just because of the drought stress that it has. But so far, the yield hasn't really been too impressive. It has been released as a CSO variety, certified seed only, but they pulled that back just this last year now, so it's not a certified seed only anymore, meaning that we can keep the seed year to year.
Everyone said one that we might see kind of jump up a little bit in yield this year just because of the conditions we've had, but again hasn't performed as well in the past. This is one that does have hessian fly, but it is on the more susceptible side to stripe rust, intermediate for leaf rust. I think when it was released, they were hoping it'd be better on stripe rust, but at that time we had a bit of a race change in the development of this variety, and now it's a bit weaker than they expected.
So WB4632, this is a brand new release, just a 2023 release out of West Brett there. I don't have a whole lot of information on it. Kelsey, do you happen to have anything?
I don't think we've seen it.
Yep, we haven't seen it this year yet. First time that we're seeing it. Does anybody have experience with 4632? Yeah, so probably we can keep it pretty short there. Yep, absolutely short, right? Talk nothing about it, but
Hopefully we'll have some more data for you next year.
Canvas, so Canvas is a Colorado State variety. It's a mix there with Denali, Ontario, and Bird on the background, so very, very Western variety out here. Canvas is going to be a medium heading for Colorado standards, probably for us out here, may almost be kind of a medium to medium late, just because the varieties out there will be later than here. Medium short in terms of height, good standability on canvas here. Good milling and baking characteristics as well. Right, in this plot here, it's looking pretty decent. I just have the feeling that it's more of a Western third adapted variety, Western third of the state. We're probably a little bit too far east for canvas out here.
Pretty popular in parts of western Kansas. Still does have the weak chromite resistance gene, CMC4, so it can hold off the chromites a bit and can help a bit with wheat streak mosaic, although that gene is not perfect under high pressure scenarios like the ones we can have out in western Kansas. Good for stripe rust, on the more intermediate to slightly susceptible to leaf rust.
LCS Chrome, we probably can keep this pretty short. It's been around for a number of years already. Never really got a whole lot of traction there. I think that part of it was just being hurt by its late maturity. Good drought tolerance, good standability on LCS Chrome here, good on acid soils. But again, the late maturity probably hurt it a little bit more than we like to see that. So, do you want to say anything on disease here? We can. AP Bigfoot, this variety here, it's got TAM112 on the background. This also has SY Wolf and a Colorado line on the background. So a very Western background in this variety here. Whenever it was coming down Syngenta's testing, it was doing really well across a fairly large geography. In their own data, it seemed like it was going from Texas to Montana and yielding quite well under that large range of conditions. In our own testing, it hasn't necessarily hold up. It's been more towards the medium to bottom in terms of performance there on AP Bigfoot. So I haven't necessarily been too impressed with it so far. In one of the plots that we were giving some winter kill notes yesterday, Bigfoot was holding in quite well. And the farmer was mentioning that in his commercial fields, it was holding in much better than some other neighboring varieties like WB4401, for example, that was showing a lot of winter kill. So there may be something there to Bigfoot in terms of winter hardiness. It's going to be an earlier maturing variety, medium to medium short there in terms of height, good on low soil pH. But I don't know, based on its background and its yield performance, I think it's more of a Western variety.
Yeah, one watch out. So does anybody ever have problems with soil-borne mosaic or spindle streak mosaic, viruses? Those are viruses we really worry about in the eastern part of the state. They survive in the soil for a long time in the fungus that houses them and can be really hard to get it out of field. So most of our varieties in eastern Kansas have full resistance to wheat streak mosaic. One watch out with Bigfoot is that it's only intermediate for spindle streak and soil-borne mosaic, and that's really something we want to watch in eastern Kansas, maybe just here and east. Just anecdotally this year, we had some soft wheat varieties come into southeast Kansas that were not soil-borne resistant, and we did see some pretty significant damage there. So it was a good reminder that virus is there, even though we don't see it every year because of the resistance we have. A bit more susceptible to stripe rust in some of our more recent notes. Intermediate for leaf rust, and this is one that doesn't have the Hessian fly resistance either.
Next up we have Whistler, which is another Colorado State variety. It has done well in our testing plots, especially as we go in the western third of the state. I think that it has soil-borne mosaic virus resistance, Kelsey, so it would move well into central Kansas. But I'll be honest, for us out here, I tend to think of this one as being kind of too tall, too late, and a little bit too weak on its knees there. I've seen it lodge pretty bad before. I'll tell a quick story here. We were putting some trials in Great Bend a few years back, and I have an extra spot that I could put a variety, and I had seed from Whistler, so I went out and I threw Whistler there just to see how it would do. Well, turned out that was a 2017 planting for a 2018 crop, which was a very dry year, right? So Whistler was really, I mean, it did really well. It was above everything else. So next year the co-op was selling seed for Whistler there because of how well it had done in the plots. And I regretted putting that variety there just because it's not really a good fit for that part of the world, right? It's tall, it's late, it doesn't have the straw strength for there. But it does give it has a drought tolerance. It's excellent in drought tolerance, part of the reason why it has done well in that year. And it looks really good here too.
Yeah, it's one that does have that soil boring, so it can theoretically come east. It's weaker on stripe rust. It does have pretty good wheat streak mosaic resistance there from the curl mite gene that we've talked about here. So, but again, yeah, probably a little far from home.
Yeah, looks really good. Might win this plot, but I don't know that I would recommend it out here. Langin is another Colorado State variety that has been around for a number of years. It's another one that has that bird on the background, and so bird comes from that TEM 112 family. Langin is going to be an earlier maturing variety, and I think that over the years it has done quite well in the western part of the state. I like Langin in western third of Kansas because it brings an earlier maturity, and those varieties out there, they are mostly on the late side. But for here, again, I think we might be a little bit too far east for Langin.
Yeah, again, this is another one that has that curl mite resistance gene. Again, that's a big problem out in western Kansas, Colorado. So that helps with wheat streak mosaic. Very susceptible to leaf rust. That'd be a big watch out, but okay on stripe rust. You know, one thing I didn't mention, but these Colorado State varieties we've looked at, Langin, Whistler, and Canvas, they're all on the more susceptible side to scab. So, you know, that's not really a big problem out in Colorado, and it's just occasionally a problem in western Kansas, but, you know, of course, it's more of a problem as we move east here.
LCS Helix AX, another coaxium variety. This one is going to be more of a medium early maturity. On Helix, we have had issues with standability on this variety here, although it does have a good yield potential. Lima Grain was putting this out more as a kind of like a racehorse type of variety within the coaxium lineup, and I think that it does have the yield potential for some pretty good yields there, but standability has been a concern again when we have those high yielding conditions. Helix, in terms of just like performance of these coaxium varieties, consistent performance, I've been a bigger fan of Atomic AX. I think it has been just more consistent than what we see here in Helix. Long coleoptile, it does have soil-borne, good on acid soils. Any other comments here on disease for Helix, Kelsey?
Yeah, so a little bit weaker on stripe rust, that'd be something to watch, although good for leaf rust, so that's kind of the opposite of what we saw there in Atomic. One that again just has some tolerance to wheat streak mosaic, but wouldn't be the best scab option.
You can skip this experimental variety from Lima Grain here, WB4401, 2020 release out of West Spread, medium early maturing variety. As soon as it was released, it did well. 2020 had a really good year. 2021 it had a good performance as well. 2022 it was more bouncing back and forth there. In this year it's looking pretty rough again. I think that it's not really one that has a good drought tolerance, and so that's something that's playing against this variety this year and the past year as well. It's a variety that comes fairly early out of the winter, so I think that we've seen it where it got hurt by those April freezes a little bit more than some other varieties out there, just because it was further along in development. So a few watch outs there. It's been bouncing back and forth on yield a little bit more than I like. And again, I think that part of that is the drought, lack of drought tolerance, and the early coming out of the winter dormancy there.
It's one that does have a good disease package, so West Spread promoted this variety as having a good disease package, and we've seen that hold on, so it's good for scab. We've seen it pretty good for leaf and stripe rust. It holds on well for those leaf spotting diseases that we talked about. So that's those are some good aspects of 4401. I've heard a couple comments that it's kind of a low management variety. If you really don't want to go out and spray the fungicide, this might be an option in that scenario.
AP18AX, another coaxium variety that has done well in our trials. So again, if we just look at the last few years in trials, AP18AX and LCS Atomic AX have been the two coaxium varieties that have been more consistently kind of showing up towards the top. Now this variety, it is 2/3 bird on the background, so it surprised me that it's doing as well in central Kansas, but it has had some pretty good yields there. Good drought tolerance on AP18AX here, good standability as well. Doesn't do very well on acid soil, so that's one concern to keep in mind. And milling and baking is going to be below average. Some other disease concerns out here, Kelsey?
Yeah, so good on stripe rust. I think it has a chromite gene, although I have to confirm that, so maybe okay on wheat streak mosaic. Some watchouts would be leaf rust and scab and barley yellow dwarf, so we see it a little weaker there.
High Country is the third variety being licensed through Polanski. It's more of a western variety. I think that here we're probably a little bit too far east. In the background it has S.Y. Wolf, Hitch, and Hatcher here. It has done well in the western part of the state, but here we may be just a little bit too far east for it. Doesn't offer much in terms of acid soil tolerance, so that can be a concern out in this part of the state here. They put it as a good winter hardiness. I guess it is looking pretty decent here, so it may be one that made through the winter a little bit better there. Again, maybe a little bit too far east for this variety.
I think so. I'm trying to get to my notes here. Do you have your disease notes handy?
Yeah, so it does have soil-borne mosaic and spindle streak mosaic resistance. They put it as good on wheat streak mosaic. I don't know if it has any gene for that or not, so maybe we need to confirm that. Stripe rust will be a concern, so need to watch out on stripe rust on this one. WB4422. So folks, this variety here, Westbred, again, is a release out of last year. Westbred is putting it out as similar to what we would have in WB Grainfield. So kind of like a western variety that moves very well into central Kansas. So it should bring a pretty good level of drought tolerance to the table here. In fact, if we look at last year's data, we only have 1 year of data on it. It did really well in north central Kansas. So actually, I think that it may be a possibility for us to take a look on this variety in this part of the state. Good standability, good protein, milling and baking there. They put it out as a good winter hardiness. In the ratings that we were giving it yesterday, it was above average on winter hardiness compared to some other varieties. Here it looks a little bit thinner than some others out there. Medium to medium early in terms of maturity for heading, but it does hold its dormancy a little bit late there, so it tends to be less exposed to some of those early spring freezes that we have out there. Didn't do as well in south central Kansas last year, but here in north central Kansas it did quite well.
And we've seen this just a little bit. It seems to be on the more susceptible side to stripe rust, so that would be something to watch. Good on leaf rust. It wouldn't be the best option for scab, and it doesn't have Hessian fly.
Last one out here is AG Icon. So AG Icon, it's been around for a number of years now, and it's another one that has shown up towards the top in some of our trials across the years. So maybe one option to take a look at. AG Icon here, it's got a good straw strength. It's good in terms of milling and baking as well. One concern with Icon would be drought tolerance, so I'm not sure if this year is going to do as well as in the past there. Early to medium early maturing variety there. It's a line that has some sister to LCS Chrome on the background, but it is a much earlier line than what we had there in LCS Chrome. It has done okay in central and north central Kansas the last 3 years or so. So one that could be an option out here. Any disease concerns, Kelsey?
Yeah, so just intermediate on stripe rust, so that might be something to think about, although good for leaf rust. This would be a more susceptible variety to wheat streak mosaic, and this probably isn't the best option that we have for scab in the lineup.
So as promised, right, we would skip some of these varieties that were not a fit, and I think we skipped one where there was no sign, right? So that was very good there. But folks, a lot of varieties that we covered here today. Anything else that you're considering for perhaps next season that were not here?
So
might put you on the spot again like I did yesterday, Romulo. So maybe you think about it. If you could go all these varieties, okay, what's like 4 or 5 that you might seriously think about looking at a little bit more closely, maybe that you haven't had before?
So if we would redo the plot tour, we only talk about 5, the 5 main ones. You know, probably in my short list there for this region, I think that KS Providence will be one that will be there. I think that this year we're going to have more seed available for that variety. And again, the reason why I'm saying that, and Bryson covered that, but just yield performance has been really good across a very wide range of conditions. I typically tend to talk about the yield potential 46.99, and Providence has been beating that variety fairly consistently. And so KS Providence would be one that I would have on my short list out here. I think that that one could go across a range of systems, either wheat on wheat or even wheat on soybeans. And it has enough scab that could even be an option after corn there, if you're willing to put out a fungicide, if needed. I would take a closer look at that AP Prolific. I think that it has looked good. Last year in this plot here, it was quite showy actually. We could pick it from the far. It was looking really good and it yielded well as well. So AP Prolific might be another one that I'll take a quick look at there, or a closer look at. Let me think here. We don't have it on the plot, but it has been it's an older one, but has been looking really well this year. SY Monument. You know, it hasn't been showing up towards the top yield anymore, but it has been just so consistent at a higher, above average yielding variety there, that I think that if Monument has been working for you, I'm still, for this region, after soybeans, I still think maybe a pretty good option there. Maybe if you're going to plant, you know, like a higher yielding bottom ground type of scenario, really push for yields, even after corn, maybe the 46.99 may be a good option there as well. Not for a drought perspective, but for pushing for yields in a higher yielding bottom ground. It's going to be hard to make decisions based on the data this year.
Thank you all for joining us today. I hope that you've learned something valuable that you can incorporate into your wheat production system. And a special thank you to all of our sponsors, Polanski Seed, the Belleville Chamber of Commerce, K-State Research and Extension, and the Kansas Wheat Alliance. We hope you have a great day.